Hello friends, welcome to today's RME lesson. This is Sewas. Now last week and the weeks after we discussed Christian religious practices and Islamic religious practices. So we are done with the two. So today we will be looking at African traditional religion in details. We'll be taking them in bits. We will look at a few of these today. So if you look at what we have here, this is what we'll be discussing for today. So by the end, you should be able to list at least 5 African traditional practices, state 5 purposes of traditional worship, define libation prayer and mention occasions when it is performed. They describe the mode of libation prayer according to one particular ethnic group. So let's continue with our lesson. Then, since we are doing practices, we look at some of these practices in traditional religion. Then after that, we'll be taking them. We take the first 3 and discuss them into details. But time will not permit us for today, so we will do traditional worship and the libation. Next time we continue with the sacrifice. So let's look at the practices that exist in traditional religion with respect to worship. So they have traditional worship, that is the first, libation prayer, sacrifices, singing, drumming and dancing, especially during a public occasion. Then they also invoke the gods and the ancestors through different forms of divination. The popular one, which is practiced by the Yorubas, that is the Odu divination. Then we have the spirit possession, that is during worship. They are possessed by the deity that they are worshipping, and so you see them, dancing in a frenzied manner whilst they speak out certain strange words for their language to interpret them to the public. They also honor their deities and ancestors through festivals. So we have traditional worship, libation prayer, offering sacrifices to the gods and ancestors, drumming, singing and dancing, invocation of spirit powers, spirit possession, and honoring the gods through festivals. So let's take traditional worship and look at some of the very important things we need to know on it. So now Christians and Muslims worship, traditionalists also worship. So if you look at traditional worship, the definition is almost just as we have discussed in the 2 different religions that we discussed last week. So traditional worship refers to showing respect to the supreme being, the gods, the ancestors, through various forms of libation, sacrifices, and daily thanksgiving or veneration. Now, traditionalists have different days by which they worship depending on the ethnic group or the community. For them, they don't have a day for worship, just as Christians have Sundays or Saturdays for worship, and Muslims have Fridays. The days chosen may depend on the deity that is being worshipped. So the priestess or the priest of that shrine may tell the worshippers that on such and such dates we worship or we venerate the objects, and so that becomes the date of worship. Now, popular among the days are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Traditional worship can also occur in the shrine, sacred groves of the gods, caves and mountains, at the banks of rivers like water bodies, or any convenient place. Now, any convenient place in the sense that if a festival is the grand level of a festival is being held in an open space, maybe in a marketplace, of course libation begins the whole proceedings. In the shrine, when people consult the gods and ancestors, you need to, that is, ask their permission through, that is, libation. Sacred groups, especially when it is a festival where cleansing and purification begin. Now, every community has rules and regulations which are called taboos, which help them to regulate the lives of the people and to minimize acts of lawlessness. Now, taboos are very important in the traditional communities because the fear of being punished by the gods and their ancestors enable people to abide by these taboos. So the fear of punishment from the gods and their sisters, as well as imposition of fines on people in the communities by the chiefs and the elders, ensure compliance of taboos in the traditional communities. Now, it doesn't mean that the traditional communities do not follow, that is, the laid down rules of the country. They do that. But, because they have certain beliefs, they also need to have their own bylaws to make sure that the people don't go contrary to the wishes of the gods and their ancestors. Let's continue. Then we come to the purposes of traditional worship. Here there are about 7 or 8 purposes here. Let's quickly go through some of them. So one, say traditionalists worship in order to express their appreciation or thanksgiving to the gods and their ancestors for their continuous blessing, protection, etc. Now, through worship, they are drawn closer to the object of worship. Now, worship also enables them to pacify and appease. So, pacify and appease the gods and the ancestors for wrongs committed against them by the people in the community, such as breaking of taboos. So, in our daily lives, we violate a lot of taboos. And so, when a traditionalist worships, that traditionalist, that is, begs the gods for wrongs that he may have committed against them, both knowingly and unknowingly. Now, they also enable traditionalists to communicate to the gods and their ancestors to seek their guidance and protection throughout the year, especially during festivals. They also provide a medium for seeking divine intervention from their problems. Then, last but one says, it enables them to confess their wrongs and to ask for forgiveness from the gods and their ancestors to avert their punishment or anger. Then, through constant traditional worship, they dedicate and commit themselves to their objects of worship. Now we go to libation. So libation is an aspect of worship in traditional religion. When a traditional man offers libation, it means that he is praying to the object of worship. Christians pray by kneeling down and communicating directly to God, but traditionalists pray through libation. Now, libation is just the act of offering drinks, alcoholic drinks to the gods and ancestors. Not basically alcoholic drink, but any drink, depending on the occasion. Because even water can even be used to offer libation. Now, to the traditional worshipper, the gods and the ancestors are the means through which they seek the face of the Supreme Being. And so the final recipient of, that is, the drinks or libation prayer, is the Supreme Being. So the traditional worshipper believes that to respect God, the deities, the lesser gods, are there as the sons and daughters of the Supreme Being. And so you channel everything you need through the gods and the ancestors. So final recipient is the Supreme Being. Now, items for libation may include alcoholic beverages like schnapps. Others are corn wine, that's the meda that we discussed in Kujemo, millet beer, which we saw this in, that is the libation in the depot. Palm wine, we saw palm wine too in the Abadinto, then pito and water. So water is used on special occasions, especially during the death of a child. Water is used to offer libation. Then every able-bodied adult of sound mind qualifies to offer libation depending on the needs. But during special occasions, these people are selected to offer libation. Chief priests, especially when it is cleansing of the community, we have chiefs, we have family or clan heads, linguists may also offer libation. Libation can be offered anywhere depending on the occasion. But some of the prominent areas include the shrine, the riverbanks, cemeteries, caves, sacred groves of the gods, etc. Now for the cemeteries, before that is, the dead is interred, permission needs to be sought from the earth goddess before she allows the dead to be buried in her bowels. So that is why libation is poured in the cemetery. Then for the river banks, maybe when it is that is time to sacrifice or to give to the gods and ancestors, it must begin with libation. Okay. Then occasion for libation may include rites of passage, just like we are discussing now. So rites of passage, which include naming, puberty rite, marriage, and the rest. Then, during outbreak of epidemic, during enthronement and enskinment of chiefs, after a narrow escape from danger, during planting and harvesting periods or seasons, during festivals, before a man embarks on a journey, and a whole lot. And the question is, why do you pray? So if you know why you pray, then it answers, that is, this particular part. It answers the question of occasions for libation, because that is a prayer to the traditional man. So let's look at the last slide. Now here we are looking at how a traditional Akan man offers libation. Yes. So how do you also pray in your religion? How do you pray? I believe you kneel down, you raise your hand, you shout, maybe you make noise. Of course, if the Muslims, they also, that is, prostrate with their face and hands on the ground. This is how a traditional man also prays. Now, for a traditional man to offer libation, the man or the person, the worshipper, must acquire a glass or a bottle of alcoholic drink, and he will stand in front with the people behind him, especially when it is a public occasion. If he's wearing a hat, a headgear, he must remove them. So he removes his hat, a headgear, bears his chest. If it is a man, especially when the man has that cloth on, and steps slightly away from his sandals as a sign of respect to the gods and their ancestors. He raises the glass of wine to the sky and mentions the names of the spirit powers in order of ranks or hierarchy as he pours the drink. Example, these are some of the things they usually say according to the order. Tridian Ponkwame as the head of the pantheon of the spirits. Then we have Asasiya, the head goddess Nananum, Samanfo, Nanum Abusum. It continues like that. So if you look here, you see that I've left a whole lot of them because there are lots. Now, after this, the people behind him support with the words "Where." Anytime the worshipper makes a statement or requests something for the community. So those people are there, the back there. They are not just there as supporters, or they are not just there as, that is, people who have come to watch proceedings. They also take part. And so the selected people behind him will support him by the word "Rie" anytime something favorable is said, and the worshipper pours a drink to the ground. Now the worshipper asks for blessing and protection from the gods and their ancestors for the people in the community, as well as the whole nation. If it is a public occasion, the worshipper may also pray for the whole nation. The worshipper pleads with the gods to expose wrongdoers in the community and also curse the enemies of the community. So in traditional prayer, enemies are not spared at all. They specifically pray for the enemies of the community to be exposed and brought to justice, as well as curse the enemies. So that in their candidate, you hear things like, "Na omambofua ekonom kwanka omenyi yede akrenyi yede emoni triso." So this is something like a curse to those wrongdoers. Now finally, the worshipper thanks the gods and their ancestors for accepting his prayer, as he pours the remaining drink in the glass or in the bottle on the ground with a resounding "Rie" from his supporters. Sometimes it goes like "Rie." Yes, so to end the libation prayer. So students, this is where we end our lesson for today. Next week we will do what to continue with sacrifice the significance of sacrifice, but not until we discuss importance of